Gini Dietrich is the founder, CEO, and author of Spin Sucks, host of the Spin Sucks podcast, and author of the book Spin Sucks. She also has run, built, and grown an agency for the past 14 years. She is co-author of Marketing in the Round, co-host of Inside PR, and co-host of the Agency Leadership Podcast. Welcome to the PR Maven Podcast, a podcast all about growing your network and building your brand through traditional and digital networking techniques. I'm Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven and CEO of Marshall Communications. I've been strengthening brands through PR for over 35 years, and now I'm celebrating the success of executives, influencers, business owners, and entrepreneurs from all around the world, all of whom have cultivated their brands and broadened their networks through traditional and digital networking methods. Each week, I interview one of these interesting and influential individuals and provide an opportunity for you, the PR Maven Nation, to gain insights from their strategies and stories. So stay tuned for this week's episode, and thanks for listening. So, Gini, tell us about your career and how you got into it in the first place.
I wanted to go to law school because I wanted to be an agent. I wanted to do contract negotiation for football players. And my mom got sick when I was a senior in college, and it was one of those things that it was like, okay, well, I can take a year off to take care of her and, make sure everything's okay, and then I'll go back to law school. And as part of that, I got an account coordinator job at a big global PR agency, knowing nothing about public relations, knowing nothing about the career or what it entailed or anything. I just needed a job to tide me over for a year so that I could go to law school. And I ended up loving it. I never went to law school. It wasn't even a second thought. I just continued my career through the big agency world until I started my own.
Well, it's interesting because you said you wanted to be an agent, a sports agent, actually. And as a PR person, in a way, we are agents because we run PR agencies, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
I can see the parallel.
Yeah, it is definitely a parallel. I'm not working with, sport athletes, but yeah. And actually, in retrospect, that's probably good.
Yeah, right, exactly, especially now.
Especially now.
Then you created this brand Spin Sucks, which is sort of anti-PR. So tell us about the premise of Spin Sucks.
We were sitting in a conference room in 2006, which seems like an eternity ago, and we were talking about this blogging thing. We've been hearing about blogging. What was it, and should we take advantage, and is it something that we could sell to clients as part of our toolbox, and should we check it out? And so we decided that yes, we should. And then it became, well, what do we name it? And one of the interns, and he and I have stayed in touch, and we were just laughing about this the other day. He said, well, you hate it when people say that you're a spin doctor, so what if we did Spin Sucks? And I was like, I love it. And the URL was available, and there you go.
I hope you're paying him a big, huge royalty every year.
He's like, I can't believe that little meeting we had and that little blog we created has become this thing.
Well, good for you for being open to it, because obviously it resonates. And I know that you have thousands of brand ambassadors who love the whole concept.
We've been very lucky, yes.
Well, lucky and as we would say in Maine, you've been smat. Wicked smat, you are.
Yes, the R's are missing.
So, Gini, how is your life different during coronavirus? You have actually kind of created this whole coronavirus home brand with your little human there. Tell us about it.
Well, I mean, I'm not any different than anybody else, especially with small kids. The middle of March comes along and they're like, okay, we're going to be out of school for 3 weeks. And I was like, okay, I can handle that for 3 weeks. And of course, as we know, 3 weeks turned into months and months and months and months. And I think the most frustrating things for me is you're not homeschooling, you're distance learning. And so the routine and the structure is not up to you, and your child or children have to follow along with what the school is doing at the same time that they're trying to figure out distance learning, because most elementary schools, or K through 12, to be honest, schools still have not figured out how to teach this way. And so they would have a 9:00 meeting every morning, which was fine because that could go on the calendar. And then I knew not to book anything at that time because I would have to help get on Zoom and all that kind of stuff. So I knew not to book any meetings at that time. But what we quickly learned is that during that meeting, the teachers would say, okay, you're going to have French at 10 and music at 12 and library at 1. And they all have different Zoom links. And, you're going to have to figure that out. And by the way, your parents are running businesses and have meetings or are interviewing for podcasts or doing webinars or whatever it is to be. So there were many days that I was, in a meeting with a client on Zoom, or I was hosting a webinar, and I had the iPad underneath my desk, and I was desperately trying to hook in the Zoom link and make sure it was the right Zoom link and that she was in the right place, in the right room, and that the system wasn't crashing, like all of that, while I'm trying to also be professional and not show that I had all this chaos going on behind me. And it was just too much. It was way too much.
Yeah, I can't imagine. My kids are grown now and out of the house, and I just cannot fathom how I would be handling having them underfoot. So you've done such a great job of documenting the insanity of it all online. And yeah, you've kept your sense of humor too.
I tried, but I had this big vision of doing it sort of Blair Witch style, where I had I would hide in the closet and I'd have the camera up against my face and I'd be like, okay, today. But I'm just not that ambitious, because then I would have to have my makeup done and I'd have to have my hair done. Yeah, that just wasn't happening. So I've been doing a Facebook diary, and it's written for the most part. I mean, there are some images and videos, but I did it because during the Great Recession, that was such a traumatic thing for me personally from a business perspective. And I remember the big moments, right? But I don't remember the little moments. And I don't remember, what happened here and why did I make that decision to get us there? And so I wanted to have something that I would remember. And I thought Facebook was a good place to do that because it returns those stories, those memories to you every year. And for some reason, it has taken off, which has been super fun.
Well, when you say for some reason, of course, it's been really engaging. And I mean, I've totally looked forward to it every day. So
thank you.
Good job.
There's some days where I sit here on my computer and I'm like, I just want to be like, this sucks. And it does some days.
Well, and it's such a great example of content marketing, which is actually how I met you in the first place, which was at Content Marketing World, where I participated in one of your breakout sessions, and it was so engaging, and I fell in love with you, to be honest.
And I fell in love with you, too, because I was like, can you just go with me everywhere and ask questions and be funny? And you're amazing. So can we just travel together? And then everything broke apart. So,
Damn.
We still have to make that happen.
Yes. We'll be like Thelma and Louise.
It's perfect.
Oh, no. So you have created a whole community around Spin Sucks, which is actually the premise of this whole podcast, which is creating raving fans and building your brand by creating an audience. And you have kept the Spin Sucks community connected even during COVID. And how have you done that?
There are a couple of things. In the beginning, it was all about blog comments, right? And we built a community that way. And we often talk about how people met in the comments of the blogs, and then they would meet in person. And we have stories from around the world where, somebody was visiting from Europe and was in New York, and they knew that there were some Spin Sucks community members who lived in New York, and so they met up in person. And there was another instance where somebody made Spin Sucks t-shirts and sent them out to some friends, and then they all got together and took a picture together. And it sort of has become its own animal that we don't, I mean, certainly we participate in and love, but it sort of has become its own thing. But then blog comments started to die down a little bit, and I didn't want to lose that. And also, you know, have some true friends in there, and didn't want to lose the opportunity to be able to engage and connect with them daily or weekly. And so we moved everything over to Slack a couple of years ago, and it's going gangbusters. It's really fun because, you know, they're supportive of one another. They're kind. They're respectful. Even when they disagree about something, they're respectful about it. And I think it's really hard to find that kind of community on the internet today, where we don't have trolls. We don't have, you know, keyboard warriors. We don't have anonymous people saying mean things to one another. It's very, very, I mean, it's kind of wholesome and clean and kind and respectful.
And how can people join that Slack community if they're interested? On
spinsucks.com/spinsuckscommunity.
There you go.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah, well, I think it sounds great. And I'm so glad you brought it up about how people have sought each other out in person, because, again, that is what I talk about in the PR Maven podcast, is that if you meet someone in person, you need to connect with them online to extend the relationship. But actually, the magic between humans happens in person. There are actual chemicals, happiness chemicals that transmit between human beings, and that you can't get that online. So if you meet someone online, you need to endeavor to meet them in person, and that's when the chemicals start going back and forth and all the magic happens.
I think you and I are a great example of that. We met in person, what was that, September, and then have connected online since then. And I 100% agree with that. Certainly it's a lot harder today, right in this moment. But, you know, Zoom is not a replacement, but it's a good way to try to get that in-person feel in times like we're in right now.
Especially with wine.
Yes, definitely with wine. 100%.
We need to do that.
Yes, we do.
And of course, we need a shout out to Laura Petrolino, who is in the state of Maine. And she and I did have a meeting at my condo in Portland. And
she said, it was so wonderful. And she goes, first of all, only in Maine does this happen, but seriously, only with someone like you. She was like, she invited me to her home. We had tea. We had a great conversation. It was lovely. And I was like, yeah, that doesn't happen in Chicago.
But yeah, Laura Petrolino and I had a lot of fun, and we did some crazy selfies because we wanted to share the moment with you. We wished that you were there with us. So
that's so funny.
Yeah,
so
it was
funny.
great.
Yeah, she's great. She's my favorite.
So we're going to take a short break now. We'll be back with a little more from Gini Dietrich, founder of Spin Sucks.
Do you want to grow your client or customer base? Perhaps increase brand awareness? Maybe tell your unique story more effectively? Of course you do. But you may be worried that you don't have enough expertise to make that happen. Well, no worries, PR Maven Nation. Let the PR Maven herself, Nancy Marshall, show you how easy it is to get your message across effectively using a powerful yet simple tool, a message map. Nancy's training is often called informative and constructive, well-designed and impactful, with a perfect blend of theory and real-life experience. You will leverage Nancy's expertise to create your own message map when you register for this comprehensive online video training course, which is broken down into 4 easy-to-understand modules. Normally, this course is priced at $147, but for listeners of the PR Maven podcast, that's you, PR Maven Nation, it's only $29 when you enter the code word podcast during enrollment. It even includes a workbook and bonus content to guide you through the process. So go to prmaven.com and click on the Message Map Mastery course to enroll today. Remember, enter the word podcast during enrollment for a special discounted price of $29.
Welcome back, and today we're talking with Gini Dietrich, founder of Spin Sucks, and I'm going to dive right back in with more questions. So, Gini, what is your vision for the future of Spin Sucks?
We launched the PESO model certification with Syracuse University in February, right at the end of February, the worst timing ever. But as part of that, it's allowed us to get the PESO model curriculum into universities. And so our vision is to have anybody who graduates with a communications, journalism, or advertising degree to also have a PESO model certification. In 2022, our first graduating class will be entering the workforce, so we've got another year and a half. But when that happens, what we'll start doing on our end is, by then, hopefully, we'll be in a majority of university programs that way. I think we're in 24 right now. And hopefully have another 3 to 6 coming on before the school year. But by 2022, the vision is that we'll be in most of the school's curriculum from that perspective, and then we'll start educating executives on what that means and why they should hire somebody who has the PESO model certification. At the same time, we're offering it to professionals, so it will begin to be a competitive edge for any professional and entering journalism, advertising, or communications fields because they have that certification on top of their degrees.
I love that. I mean, it totally reflects the changes in public relations. And of course, I've been doing public relations for, I'm not even going to say, it's a long, long time. So there's been so many changes. And tell us more about the PESO model, because it really captures the new form of public relations.
Yeah, it does. And I think it's allowing us to evolve our careers as well. You know, I've been in PR for a very long time as well. And you know, I mean, when we started our careers, it was all about media relations and some events and reputation and crisis, maybe some public affairs, but really not much more than that. And it has evolved, especially in the last 13, 12 years, definitely the last decade. Now we're doing social and content, and we're doing some social media advertising. We may be doing some search engine marketing. We're doing email marketing. We're doing lead generation. There's all this kind of stuff that we're doing. And so the PESO model takes a foundation approach, and it looks at the 4 media types where you have paid, earned, shared, and owned. And you build your communications program built on that foundation. And then where those media types overlap, you start to build out from there. So for instance, where paid and earned overlap, you have influencer marketing and some of the more traditional marketing communications. Where earned and owned overlap, you have search engine optimization and authority and credibility and all those kinds of things. So you start to see some of the more traditional things that we're known for, of course, are brought into that, but you're adding more pieces on top of it and layering it in so that it becomes a fully integrated program that's measurable versus we do media relations or we do events or we do crisis.
Well, and I really commend you for getting this concept into universities all across the country. I mean, that is a big vision, and it makes so much sense to really impact the future of our profession.
Right. And you know, we tried to go top down. We tried to go profession down, and it didn't work as well. I think part of the reason is that, you know, people are comfortable in some cases, and a lot of professionals across the board, not just in our industry, but across the board, you know, we get stuck. We get stuck in, we have a job and we get a paycheck and we have our mortgage and we have our kids and like all this stuff, you know, and it doesn't allow us to sort of step aside and go, okay, what else should I be doing or how else can I be doing it? And so what we decided is if we came in at the university level and up, that it would be a more effective way of doing it.
Well, I think it makes a lot of sense, and I am going to look into it myself for my whole team because I think that it would give them a whole new breath of fresh air in their profession, in their career.
Yeah, I think it does, and I think it you know, you start to get back to the reason that you went into this in the first place. You get to do things that you love again, and you get to measure it, which I think is one of the biggest challenges we have as an industry is there isn't a real way for us to measure our efforts. Sure, brand awareness and reputation and all of those things are important, but it's really hard. It's not tangible. It's really hard to measure. And some of these other things, when you bring them in, allow you to use data to actually prove that you're an investment, not an expense.
That's very smart. And actually, a lot of people who go into PR go into it because they hate doing math and they hate doing analysis.
Yes. But I always say, it's just funny you say that, because when I speak to audiences, to PR audiences, I'll say, how many of you went into PR because you hate math? And, 99% of the room raise their hand, which always makes me laugh. But data isn't, I don't look at data, certainly it's numbers, but I don't look at it as math. I look at it as a way to tell a story. And when you look at it and you go, I mean, even just at the very, very basic, if you look at your Google Analytics and you see your visitors dropped by 200% one day, certainly there's something wrong. That's telling you a story, right? Now you have to figure out what the story is, but it's telling you something. So it's less about the numbers and the math and more about what story is the data telling you?
Well, for me as a real entrepreneur, the thing that motivates me is justifying getting a bigger budget. And actually
100, yes.
If I can use data to get a bigger budget from a client, then I'm interested in it.
Heck yes. Me too.
Yeah. So you and I obviously are both big fans of content marketing. And what is your take on content marketing and how does that fit into the peso model?
I think actually it's funny because people will say, well, paid isn't really what we do. And I would argue that in some cases it is. I don't think that we should be out writing jingles or Super Bowl campaigns or anything like that. But or boosting content or native advertising. Native advertising is the advertorial of old, and we've always done those. So I argue that we actually start with owned, and then we go from owned to either earned or shared, and then to paid. But you have to have content before you can validate it through earned and distribute it through shared and amplify it through paid. So you always want to start with owned. And the only reason we didn't name it OESP or OSEP is because it's harder to remember. Peso is easy to remember and it's easy to say.
Right, exactly. And peso is another word for money, right?
Correct. We always make that. Yes, we're always like, and then measure your results. You get bigger budgets, more money for sure. Yep.
Well, at Marshall Communications, we were brainstorming recently how to increase our numbers in our social media. And we realized that several of us love to cook, and we obviously also love to eat. So one of our employees, Anna, is creating these cooking videos from home right now. And they've really and she is exactly like a Food Network host. We realize that probably Food Network's going to see these videos and try to hire her away.
Oh, no! Shut it down!
So, yeah,
that's awesome.
That's been something, again, it's kind of fun and creative. And, it doesn't directly apply to public relations. But on the other hand, it's reflecting kind of our home life, which is really what's happening during COVID. I think we're seeing, for example, Al Roker, he creates a daily Instagram cooking show with his son, Nick, and I've been watching that. And I love kind of the creativity that's coming out during COVID-19.
It's so cool. I mean, some of the things that businesses have done. I mean, Al Roker is a great example of that. What you guys are doing is a great example of it. I think you're right. What chaos and crisis always creates is an opportunity for creativity. And I think in the beginning we were all just like, what just happened? And now it's been enough time that we're starting to settle into a routine and you have the ability to be creative again. It's amazing.
Yeah. And I think we're going to have a lot more opportunities because this is going to...
Oh, yes, we are.
It's kind of the new normal.
Yes, it is.
So, Gini, how have you grown your personal brand, and what is the difference between your personal brand and the Spin Sucks brand? Are they the same thing, or are they different?
It's such a hard question for me to answer. So I will tell you this, that as we were going through the negotiations with Syracuse on the Peso Model certification, they said to me, we want this to be the Peso Model certification to be presented by Gini Dietrich, not Spin Sucks. I thought that at first because I've worked really hard to create a brand around a business that, if someday I wanted to sell, I could. And it's really challenging to do that when it's wrapped around a personal brand. But as we started digging in, and I was digging my heels in further, we discovered that it really is, that SpinSucks doesn't exist without me regardless. And so we've gone back and forth about what that looks like. And I fight that. I do, because it feels a little egocentric, but also I want it to be bigger than me. Like I mentioned, the SpinSucks community is bigger than us. And I want the business and the brand to be bigger than the Gini Dietrich show. But, try as I might, it's still wrapped around me.
Well, I think that humans are always interested in the human interest story behind any brand.
Absolutely.
So, you are the founder, and so the origin story is about you. But as you've said, it has grown beyond you, and you've created a community and a brand, and I love that about it.
Well, we'll see. I don't think it's anything anybody would buy without me, but, we'll get there, maybe.
I think so, especially because people, students are going to become certified as part of their PR education, and that's just so exciting.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. And it's funny because as part of that, they get to join the SpinSucks community, and it's really interesting, and this will not come as a surprise, but it's really interesting to see the caliber of different types of students. Like, you have the students who are super engaged and ask all sorts of questions, and then you have students you never hear from. So it's been really interesting from that perspective.
Well, I can gamble that the ones that you hear from are probably going to be the more successful, because they realize the power of networking. And
exactly. Yeah. I mean, heck yeah. Why would you not, as a student, take advantage of that community that, has thousands of professionals in it?
Exactly. It's just like when I'm speaking with students, I always say, start using LinkedIn because you should grow your network. And I said, go ahead and invite me right away. Invite me, because then you're going to tap into my network, which is pretty large.
Right. Right. Yes. And some of them absolutely do it, and some of them you'll never hear from.
No. So sad.
It's funny. I know.
So, Gini, how has PR changed over the course of your career?
I was joking with a friend the other day that, when I started, my job was to make copies of all the clips and make the clip books. And this is definitely going to age me, but back then you could make black and white copies. And then if you made a color copy, it would run 4 times or maybe 5 times. It would run the blue, and then the magenta, and then the yellow, and then the black, and then it would do one final swipe. So, I would stand there for hours while it made all these color copies so I could make these clip books. Thank heaven we don't have to do that anymore.
I know it. Well, I actually had a clipping service that employed maybe, I think, 11 people at one point.
You did?
Oh, yeah, because we weren't getting all the clips from the national service that we wanted from, the little weekly papers. So I had this whole army of people who, and actually Charlene Williams, Charlene is today the president of Marshall Communications, but she started back in the day just as a clipper. She would go to the post office, get all the newspapers, and the ones she couldn't get delivered, she would go to the store and buy them and literally sit at her kitchen table with scissors, and then she would tape everything.
And a glue stick.
Yeah, and then fax it to the client. And when
my gosh.
when I think about the work that was involved, how labor intensive it was.
Yes. But that's hysterical.
That was all in an effort to try to justify our existence.
Yeah, look at these big clip books we have for you.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so funny.
Well,
So that's how much it's changed.
Yeah, exactly. I know. We had no Google back then.
We had no Google. You had to actually read the magazines and newspapers to figure out who you're going to pick.
Oh yeah, totally. And then you'd have to read them to find the stories.
Right.
And cut them out.
Yeah, my times have changed.
Yes, indeed. Thankfully. I'm so grateful.
Thankfully, it's right.
I'm so grateful for the Google.
I know. It changed our lives.
Truly.
It makes things so much easier.
Truly. And now we have Siri and we have Alexa and we have all these assistants.
It's amazing. Yep, it's amazing. We can be so much more efficient now.
Thankfully. So, Gini, is there a book or an app or a website that has helped you in your career, and why?
Oh, man, so many. I would say most recently, I'm looking at my books here. Actually, most recently, I would say Story Brand by Donald Miller. Very, very good. And he does some online courses and things like that too. He does a really nice job of helping an organization tell their story in a very valuable way. So from a content perspective, it's really good. And the other one is The Conversion Code by Chris Smith, which talks more about how to use paid media to amplify your content.
Nice. How to use paid media to amplify your content.
Mm-hmm. It's really good. He has a very nice process that's really well thought out.
Great. I will definitely check out Conversion Code and Story Brand. Of course, I'm very familiar with, and I just think it's so important. You know, when we're working with clients, we help develop what we call the brand manifesto, which is sort of your story, but also your convictions and what you believe in and what your vision is for the future and your mission. And it kind of wraps that all in a wonderful story. And obviously, the purpose is to give a story, to give your brand ambassadors something to talk about, to get even more brand followers.
Right. Love it. Love it. Love it.
Well, Gini, this has been so fun, and I think we're going to have you back again so we can laugh a little more. And maybe we will have to have wine, too.
We should do that one on video.
Oh, boy. I think the numbers will go up for that one, for sure.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
Either
right,
that or they'll be like, oh, these two women.
Yeah, it might be that Thelma and Louise effect where people are like, oh, here they come.
We'll start with our virtual wine and go from there. Yeah. I like it.
So how can people get in touch with you to follow up, Gini?
Spinsucks.com is the easiest. Everything's there.
There you go. What is the name of that intern who created the name SpinSucks?
Alex Parker.
Well, there you go. Shout out to Alex.
Yeah, he and I were just laughing about that the other day.
Yeah, great. Well, Gini, thank you for joining us, and I hope everyone has a great day in PR Maven Nation. That's it for this week's episode. I'd like to thank you for listening, and if you feel that you've gotten value out of today's conversation, consider leaving a 5-star review on iTunes or whatever app you're using to tune in. If you haven't subscribed yet, you should do so. I release a new episode each week, and subscribing will make sure you get an alert when there's a new episode. You can also join the PR Maven Nation by going to prmaven.com/nation and clicking join. It's free, and it's a great community of like-minded individuals who are all looking to learn and grow from one another. If you have an Alexa-enabled device, be sure to add the PR Maven Marketing Minute to your daily flash briefing menu. Thanks again for listening, and have a great rest of your week, PR Maven Nation.